Monday, April 14th, 2014, Washougal City Council meeting. If you would please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just before this meeting, we did have a workshop meeting that started at 5. Main topics that council discussed during that meeting were in agreement with the City of Camas, the Port, and the Camas-Washougal Economic Development Association in regards to new market tax credits. We'll talk about that in this meeting as well. Our water system comprehensive plan update, which tonight we have on consent, a public hearing to be set for that update as well. And then also some information on transportation benefit districts, which we will continue later in this meeting. Rose, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Boger.
Here.
Councilmember Plinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Thank you. First item that we have on this evening's agenda is a presentation from Dave Pinkernell on both our local Camas-Washougal Community Chest and also the Columbia Gorge Refuge Stewards. Dave, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Guard, Council. My name is Dave Pinkernell. I'm president of the Camas-Washougal Community Chest. I'm going to take about 8 minutes to give you a brief update of what the Community Chest is doing for the towns of Camas and Washougal. The Community Chest has been around for a long time, 68 years. And the Community Chest, if we go back to the end of World War II, there were a lot of community chests that were formed in the 40s and 50s all across the nation. The vast majority of those coalesced into large united ways. The Camas and Washougal Community Chest decided to stay independent, to stay focused on just the residents of Camas and Washougal. We're also all volunteer, unlike the United Way. We're all volunteer. We have a board of directors, about a dozen board of directors and myself. We do the job, the due diligence to make sure that the funds that come in are going back to the residents of Camas and Washougal, and that we're running as efficiently as possible. We're keeping our overhead as low as possible. Actually, this year, 98% of the money we brought in went back to community or people of Camas and Washougal.
Good numbers.
Yes. There is a need out there. As the grant requests come in, every December 15th, we receive well over 20 grant requests from agencies wanting to receive funding from the Community Chest. And they've got sources of data in there. I pulled out some of this. It illustrates the need that we've got in the community. In Washougal, 11% of families, according to the U.S. Census data put together by the Children's Home Society across the street there, 11% of families have income of less than $25,000. 40% of students qualify for a free lunch or reduced payment lunch. That's a lot. I bet 4 in 10 kids in Washougal, they qualify and need a assistant for lunch. Imagine the need they have when they go back home. The Community Chest is helping to fund the agencies that are providing that support network. These are just some of the agencies that we supported in the last 3 years. You see there's a large list there. Some of them you recognize, some of them you don't. Some are statewide, but again, what we do is we work with them to make sure that they got accounts that are set up just for Camas and Washougal residents and kids. I'm going to go into detail on just a few of those. There's a heartwarming story to tell with each one of those, of how it makes a difference to the community. I've just got time for 3 or 4 here. The Interfaith Treasure House. The Interfaith Treasure House, they serve a large amount of people for the relatively, there's Nancy Wilson down there and her small staff just do an incredible job. We have 15,000 people were impacted with food and meals last year by the Interfaith Treasure House. You may have saw the headlines in the Post Record last fall that the Interfaith Treasure House, their shelves were going bare. They were running out of donations. The community chest, not only are we a regular supporter of them, we figured out how to come up with an extra $5,000 last fall to tide them over until the Christmas donations came in. So that's part of the work that we do, working with the Treasure House and our agencies. The Children's Home Society across the street, they're another recipient of our funding. They also have a major impact. I know that was a bit of controversy of whether amongst the council here to support them, and I wanted to thank you for the decision you've made to continue to support the Children's Home Society. We have limited resources. We can't do it all. They can't do it all. They need whatever help they can get. What we do is we pay for a good part of Renee's salary there. Renee, you can see taking food off the shelves to help the folks there, because you need to have a paid staff member there like Renee who's trained that when someone comes off the street and is in trouble, she can point them in the right direction, get them connected with the resources they need to get that person or that family back on track. This is a program that's near and dear to Mayor Guard's heart back when he was associated with the Community Chest. And this is the Principal's Checkbook. The Principal's Checkbook is a small amount of funding that we grant to each school district, and the principals can use it for, at their discretion, when a kid comes in or a teacher sees that a kid's in trouble, give a little bit of money to get a medical supply or a school supply, done very discreetly, and get that kid back on track. It's a huge impact for a very small amount of money and it's a special program of the Community Chest. Lastly, I'll talk about the Estuary Partnership down there at Steigerwald. The Community Chest, we set up a program there to bring in the Estuary Partnership. They come into the Kamloops and Washougal schools, over 500 fifth graders. I think it was almost 900 fifth graders benefited this year from 3 days of stewardship training in class, then going out to the field. I helped out in the field, and seeing these kids go out there and apply the training they had, even though it's raining, they're just having a blast. You know, they're identifying non-native species, and they're identifying native species and planting trees. They walk away from that with a whole new ownership of the environment and our own 1,000-acre wildlife refuge in our backyard, our front yard at Washougal. So the funding we have just granted out. We reviewed all those grant requests. We always get more requests than we have money available. Our budget, $78,000, is what we brought in last year, so we're giving out $78,000 this year. That's our budget. For this year, we hope to exceed that. So far this year, we've got $78,000 raised. Where do we get the funding? Well, from folks like yourselves, individuals, also employees of corporations. Our largest source of funding, half of our funding comes from Georgia Pacific employees and foundation. What we want to do this year is we're doing outreach. That's why I'm here. Doing outreach to get the word out that we want to diversify that source of income. It's a bit risky to be so dependent on one source. We want to get the word out. We'd like to get other sources. We'd like to get in and give this pitch to other companies, including the city of Washougal. So I think I'll be, with Mayor Guard's help, be coming back to talk to the city staff. One of the things, you can give a donation here. I want to pass around our brochures here. There's a donation form on the back there if you'd like to personally contribute. Yep. Also our website. Because we run unlimited overhead, I'm also the webmaster. So I haven't figured out how to take credit card donations yet, but that's on the list of things to do. But you could just donate a donation form. This is the board of directors. There's about, I think, 12 or 13 of us now.
Give him back so he doesn't.
It was heavily Camas-centric, but I'm from Washougal, so my mission here is to get more Washougal presence. We have Terry London and myself from Washougal, and we just recruited Dawn Tarzan. She's an awesome addition to the board. She's very busy, but little time, and so we can get is appreciated from her. City Council from Camas is represented with Linda, so if somebody from the city would like to be on our board of directors from Washougal, would love to have that to kind of get some balance there. And also, we're expanding our friends of the community chest. So we would like to find somebody from the city or the city council would like to be a friend of the community chest, so that when we kick off our fall campaign, that's somebody we can, can lean on to advocate for us within their organization. So that's everything I have on the community chest. That's very quick. Before I switch over to the stewards, I also have any questions? Yes.
I do. Hi. Welcome. Thank you for coming and giving your presentation. I love it. I always enjoy it every year. The Community Foundation for Southwest Washington also has a principal's checkbook program.
Oh, right.
And I'm just wondering, I know they were looking for some stewards to help manage that.
Okay.
So I don't know if that would be something that the Community Chest would be interested in doing. They initially approached the Washougal Schools Foundation to do that for them, but we were unable to do so due to our bylaws.
We can only do it for Canvas and Washougal. We can't do it for the Clark County.
It's not. It's specific for the schools in particular areas. So the funding if the funding would be specific for the schools.
Contact the, what's the?
Yeah, I will be happy to give you the information,
Okay.
but it's Elora, Ellora, Lashier. Okay, I'll forward it to you.
Here's some extra pamphlets,
Okay, thanks.
brochures.
Thank you.
Other questions for Eva on community chest?
I too want to say thank you. I'm closely connected to the Community Pregnancy Clinic, also known as Pathways now.
Yes, and they got a donation from, or grant?
Yes, I knew that. Took Mike Nerlin down there for a tour, and he's on your board, and he
Yes.
said, yeah, we donate, and sure enough, it's
Yeah.
excellent, so thank you for
Yeah,
that.
they remodeled the basement down there.
Yeah, it's beautiful,
Yeah, so there's a great.
except for if you're over 6'3",
Yeah,
because it's really,
we didn't have enough funds to pay
you
for
know, lift that
basement
floor up,
repair.
huh? No, but it looks great, thank you.
All right, I'm going to switch over to another hat I have, another volunteer. I do two volunteer jobs. And this is with the Columbia Gorge Refuge Stewards. And Columbia Gorge Refuge Stewards, our mission is to be the support for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the three wildlife refuges that are in the gorge. The big one being Steigerwald in our front yard, as well as two others in the gorge. At the refuge, there's just one refuge manager for those three. He's way overworked. He depends heavily on volunteers to get the work done out there, to get projects done out there on the refuge, and to do advocacy. So that's what I'm here. That's my objective here, is to create awareness and advocacy of the Columbia Gorge Refuge Stewards, as well as the activities, recent activities going out on the refuge. The upper map there is a map of the Steigerwald, and you're all familiar with that. Down at the bottom shows, and come in the middle insert there shows the three refuges that are in the gorge. Out towards Beacon Rock are Franz Lake and Pierce refuges. And there are two little hidden gems. Public is not allowed access to them because they're for the wildlife, but if you join the stewards, we have projects out there, and it's just wonderful to do some work out there. It's so beautiful. Visitors, of course, are welcome out there. You're all familiar with our 2 3/4 mile walking trail, and as well as the bird watching. Environmental education is a big program for us, as well as you saw the Estuary Partnership. We work closely with the Estuary Partnership to do the education of the kids, as well as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife has a sponsored program through Friends of the Columbia Gorge. So there's lots of programs going on to educate the kids. I mentioned the habitat restoration. A relatively new one is we've been banding birds, specifically the rare purple martin. It's a type of swallow that's endangered, and it migrates a long way. If you've walked along the dike, you've seen those white gourds and little condos. Those are just for the purple martins, or pumas is called purple martins. We've been waiting for them to come back. We had 48 nesting pairs last spring. We were able to, with the wildlife biologist was able to show us how to band them, the little babies, before they fledged. And now they're coming back. We've been waiting. We've been having folks keep an eye out. And I'm proud to say my wife and I last night were the first to see the returning female-male paired scouts last night, got pictures of them, reported them to the Purple Martin organization, and so we got some returning pairs back. We're very excited about that. And then end of July, we'll be banding those birds, helping to understand where do these birds go. And also, very exciting, we're going to add, our intent is to add 88 acres in yellow there. Now, blue is the Steigerwald Wildlife Refuge there. In yellow is 88 acres that we intend to add. That is oak land there that's privately owned. We've been working with the Friends of the Columbia Gorge, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Conservation buyers have recently purchased it, and it's holding it until Fish and Wildlife can get the funding to acquire it. It's going to add some great biodiversity where the refuge right now is mainly grassland and cottonwood. That is the original oaks, the Oregon white oak that was here during Lewis and Clark days. And that's what they would see. And so that's right, adjacent to the gorge, right on the other side of Evergreen. So that's exciting. There's a 30-day comment period, so we could use your support if there's information on our website on how to comment on it for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife environmental report. And
So
our
where is
intention
it?
is,
Can you give us a detail on where it's located? I can't tell by
yeah,
that.
there's,
Sorry?
Up off Gibson Road.
it's right north of Evergreen, just west of Gibson Road, where Gibson curves around, goes on up Gibson Road. So that's the basic location of those 88 acres.
Okay.
Just the hillside there as it starts to go up to Gibson Road. The economics, the refuge has a major impact on the community. This is from a recent study done for all of the refuges across the nation, but it uses some pretty good metrics. The number of visitors you could see that we have, those are tracked by Jim Clapp, the refuge manager, and the visitor spending is pretty significant. And of course, we've got the big event coming up a year from May that Renee Carroll's committee's putting together, and we're participating in that. We have a board member who's on her committee. If you want any more information, our website, also we have a Facebook page that we put stuff on almost every day that didn't make it onto the translation to the iPad here. But if you want to become friends with us, love to have you friends on Facebook. It's fun. You can see all the stuff like the purple barn coming back and the turtles sunning themselves yesterday. I think that's everything on that. So thank you for your time on awareness of that. Yes.
I just had a quick question on the you had like welcome families picture
Yeah.
up there. So how do we you talked about bird banding. I probably have a little entourage at home. I mean, how do you know about all those activities?
Well, thank you for reminding me to hand out brochures here. Brochure, we have a website that's got information on it. Probably more coming back. Hopefully we got more brochures here for the community test. On our website, we list the activities. Frankly, right now, most of our activity for planting is during the rainy season. The last planting was just 2 weeks ago. We've learned the hard way that anything planted between now and November won't survive long term. So
Want one?
most of the activities is but there'll be a call for volunteers for banding probably in July. But wintertime is the main activities out there for getting out there and doing the restoration of habitat. Well, thank you for your time.
Dave, thank you, and thank you for continuing to take on some additional tasks. For those that are not aware, Jim Clapp is actually retiring this week.
Thanks for moving.
And for the time being, anyway, the Department of Fish and Wildlife are not replacing his position. There's some talk about some potential interns, but more stuff coming from the stewards to be able to help and to volunteer. And I guess Jim's actually coming back somewhat as a I don't know if it would be a full-time volunteer, but he's going to do some volunteering, so still coordinate some of the projects.
Specifically, he wants me to correct you. They're going to bring a park ranger in July. He's a refuge manager. A park ranger is kind of like a step above an intern. So he'll be a park ranger for a year, and Jim is going to spend every Monday mentoring him. But it's going to be different. Jim I don't think he realizes how much he does out there. So it's going to be, we're going to all have to step up to really keep that place going without you.
Dave, thank you again. Okay, are there any amendments to the agenda for this evening? I do have, I've put in item F under new business to finish our transportation benefit district discussion. Are there any additional changes to the agenda? Okay. That brings us to the first opportunity for public comments. Any member of the public that would like to address council? Good evening, Larry.
Good evening, Council. My name's Larry Keister, Zitzelberger Road in Washougal. I'd like to talk about the new market tax credit project. Thank you, Paul, for your explanation. This is a very complicated issue. Wish I had have heard it a year ago. It would have made my learning curve a lot easier. So I would like to address this as it's coming from the citizen, okay? What you're being asked for is to make an agreement with CWEDA and the City of Camas, two entities that you already work with, and you've had really good relationship, and you've had good results from both of those relationships. You know, CWEDA is doing a phenomenal job for the economic benefit of our community. You're being asked to form a CDE to promote the economic development in our community, which is not presently receiving sufficient economic development. A CDE, look at it as like a contractor's license. You have to have the license to do the job. So we have to form the CDE to apply for the project. It comes in 3 phases. So first phase, we make the application, we see what projects that are available, and then we move on from there. It isn't you jump in all, 100%. You go a little bit at a time. It's managed by CWEDA, who's done a phenomenal job in the economic development of our community already. Lone Wolf has done a very, very good job with the downtown Washougal development over the past couple years, but do you really feel that they are maximizing our economic potential for what they've done so far? You asked about who are the businesses that would benefit from forming this relationship. Number one, it's the port. The port has got businesses that are looking to build down there and to get in there. And who is the port? You are. The port is within the city of Washougal, a good portion of it. So you are the people who are going to be benefiting from this relationship. But the time is short. The time to apply is running out. And I urge you to make a decision to support the economic development of Washougal.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else from the public that would like to address council? Mike, come on up. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Michael Wolf. I live at 2259 39th Street in Washougal, just up above the high school. And you probably guessed I'm here about pickleball. First thing I just want to say thank you so much for the decision to go ahead and fund the pickleball courts at Hathaway Park. It looks like they're really going to happen, and we're really happy about that, and I think you're going to be happy about it also. I think you're going to see a lot of use. I think it's going to be great. One of the things we're doing to inform the public, and also as a fundraiser in case we need more funds, which it looks like we probably do, to complete the project, we're calling the Washougal Pickleball Festival on May the 3rd at Washougal High School. And I have a flyer here that maybe we can get put up somewhere, and it tells the basics of it, but this is something that is open for free for everyone. Of course, we're asking people to give donations, but we're not charging to come to the event. And we've got about 10 of the top players in the country, they're probably all of them in the top 30 or 35 players in the country, the two top men in the country that are going to come put on an exhibition at that pickleball festival, but we're also going to have hands-on. Anybody who wants to try pickleball, we're going to have some games, we're going to have some food, so we're going to have a really good time, and at the same time, hopefully raise some money to kind of close that gap to get the pickleball facility completed. So the big thing is, thank you, and I do have this information, and we have also, just so you know, we have 60-plus volunteers that are going to help put on this festival at the high school. And we're going to try to suck some money out of them too, but I told them that. So anyway, main thing is thanks a lot, and hopefully you'll spread the word. And I do have some little flyers that I'll hand to, you can each have one, because I know you're all going to help us promote this. So
You gonna have pickles there?
we're going to have pickles, actually. I have a jar of pickles that'll go to somebody who wins them in one of our contests. So, yep.
Fried dill pickles. Mike, if you would, the large poster and some of the materials, if you can get those 2 rows. And then if you've got a couple, 3 more that we can get here at City Hall, we've got some other places we can put them as well.
Your question.
Thank you for everything your group is doing to help keep us straight as we move this stuff forward.
So it's May 3rd of this year, huh?
Anyone else that would like to address council?
There's trade-offs.
Okay, not your only opportunity. Moving to the consent agenda, we will be moving item I, the New Market Tax Credit Program agenda item off of the consent agenda and onto the regular agenda. So your consent agenda will consist of 8 items this evening. Your council workshop minutes of March 24th, 2014. Your council minutes of March 24th. Your regular accounts payable claims in the amount of $559,642.92. Your payroll claims in the amount of $515,427.70. A utility assistance program approval totaling $420.12. Agenda Bill 2414, setting a public hearing for the Water System Comprehensive Plan update. Agenda Bill 2414, authorizing the mayor to sign an agreement with Ronald Schumacher. And Agenda Bill 2514, authorizing the mayor to sign a professional service agreement with Wallace Engineering for the 2014 development review. Council?
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we approve the consent agenda as read for items A through H.
Dave?
Is item I, the professional services agreement with Quito on the, still on the consent agenda?
No,
No.
It's been pulled?
we're about to take that up.
Okay, and I'd like to pull item E, please, for discussion.
Okay? Any other
So-
items?
So I ask unanimous consent that we approve consent agenda items A, B, C, D, F, G, and H, omitting E and I.
There no objection, those items are approved. Item number E, the Utility Assistance Program approval. Ms. Forsberg.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. These are the applications that have been approved through the review process for assistance with your utility payments. They're in need of emergency assistance, and once approved, we will credit their account with the payment based on the utility program that we put in place.
Thank you. Dave?
I yield to Mr.
Well, I
Boger, who's
just
going
have
to
a-
make a point that I need to counter.
No, I just wondered, is there a need for these to come before the council? I mean, is there a way we could change the program a little bit so that this could be done administratively?
In our research with MRSC at the time of putting the program together, they recommended bringing it forward for full council approval.
Okay.
And in discussion, I believe the council didn't want that authority to lay with the 3 finance committee members, but to ensure that the whole council had the opportunity to provide input in support of the program.
Okay. That's my point.
Uh, And I understand your point, and I don't particularly like bringing this up every time either. So if my council colleagues will not take umbrage at it, I will simply abstain from this item in the future, and so we don't have to pull it off the agenda. I pull it off the agenda every time that it's here because it involves a function that is not germane to municipal city government. Charity is a county mission. Social services are a county mission, and we have no part of it. Mr. Bulger has pointed out in the past, and I appreciate his doing it, that the Washington State Constitution allows us to make exceptions to take care of charitable causes. And I have pointed out that because we can doesn't necessarily mean that we should. So I'm going to vote against this simply because I don't think it's our function. We saw the community chest here tonight. That's their function. There are other private charities here in Washougal who do this sort of thing. That's their function. It's not our function. I'll vote against it, and I'll be 1-6 tonight, I'm sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Paul?
I would just ask staff to talk to MRSC a bit more on this. It is certainly true that this finance committee, Karen, Joyce, and myself, we do examine those pretty carefully, and it's certainly not a rubber stamp. And so if the legal beagles are comfortable with this, I don't have a problem with finance committee doing it.
Let's see how emphatic MRSC was. It sounds like they were a little equivocal on it.
I'll double check.
Okay.
I'll double check and see what we can do.
County Joe?
I know there's certain criteria that has to be met in order to qualify. Yeah, it's on, thanks. Who keeps track of that? Is that Jen's responsibility, or is that
Finance
the
Department's.
finance, not the committee, but the department?
Finance Department.
The department forwards a recommendation to the committee.
So they've already
And,
vetted that
well,
recommendation?
they've vetted it, but then we check it.
Okay,
We don't assume that it's correct.
all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item E under the consent agenda. The Utility Assistance Program
Second.
approval.
Got a motion and a second to approve the amount of $420.12 in utility assistance program. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to Agenda Bill 2614, a professional services agreement with Quita and the City of Camas regarding the New Market Tax Credit Project. Council, I think we've pretty much started the conversation during workshops, so I would certainly entertain a continuation of those discussions. You've got a summary statement from the staff on your agenda bill. The recommended action is to authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement between Quita and the City of Washougal, the City of Camas, and the Port of Camas and Washougal.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize the mayor to sign the PSA between Quita and the cities and port.
I've got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the PSA. Council discussion.
I've got a couple of things. On what's actually the second page of Exhibit A, under compensation C, parenthesis 2, upon agreement of the parties. What does that mean? I want it specifically to include in there upon agreement of the Washougal City Council. And further, in the same place in item D, And on the next page, 5, I'll make that one separately, but my point is going to be that Washougal Council needs to be informed, advised on status and progress. So I would move to amend the motion on the floor to change 3C2 to upon agreement of the parties, including in particular the City Council of Washougal. And item D, also, Phase 3 will commence only at the request and direction of the parties, including specifically the City Council of Washougal.
That's acceptable. To the second.
Do you actually want the words specifically in there?
I don't have a problem with that.
So you want to place yourself above the port and the other city?
Well, they can add that to themselves.
To Paul's point, what if we just change that to all parties? And that would
problem is
refer to
it's-
all parties that have signed.
I think there's some ambiguity as to what the City of Washougal or Washougal means. And I want specifically the City Council of Washougal to be involved in that.
And I'm not saying they wouldn't, I'm just trying to figure out language because I know the port's going to want that, the city of campuses. That's why we just said parties. If that's too ambiguous, what if we said?
How about the governing board of all parties?
That works.
That's fine. I'm just trying to keep the language simple enough because our intent is to have all the partners sign the same agreement.
I understand, and that's one of the advantages of going first, is that we can change the agreement.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, governing boards works for me. I'll call that a friendly amendment.
A friendly second, since it was my idea.
Okay, so I've got a motion and a second for an amendment on Exhibit A, Item 3, Sections C and D, to where any reference to agreement of the parties and direction of the parties reads the governing body of all parties.
Bodies.
Governing board. Bodies?
Bodies.
Bodies, not boards? Bodies.
Any
Yeah, that's
You
the
want-
same, that's the same, you know,
Any council
Singular?
discussion?
bodies is fine.
Bodies?
Dave?
Doesn't this provision imply the use of money, and in which case it would come before council anyway?
Not once
No.
it's,
Not once.
not once
It's
it's
a
enacted, no,
one-time thing.
not necessarily.
Okay, now I see where you're coming from, Paul.
Because there's no other money involved as far as Washougal money, other than what we're agreeing to today. What we may agree to today.
Any other questions, comments?
Paul had his hand up.
Oh, no, that's later.
One of the things, I wish, I hope one of the two gentlemen, Paul, or one of the two of you can explain how this is going to be governed a little bit more thoroughly. There's going to be a board of directors of the nonprofit, and then there's going to be an advisory board.
We can, let's hold off on that. We can certainly go through those. Right now, we've got
Okay.
a motion on the table in regards to the amendment adding governing bodies of all parties. Any other discussion on that language change? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Did you want to go ahead with yours, or Paul, did you want to do your other one?
Well, I'd like hear a little bit, one of the two of you could step forward, because one of the feedback I've gotten from some members of the community is that there's not going to be sufficient community input, and some of the projects that this program has been used for in the past are not necessarily a good fit for Washougal. And what, are we basically going to be surrendering any control over that?
If I stray, let me know. But but a little background. Excuse me. The CDE is a private company, so it will have a board of owners. The program requirements at the federal level is that the projects demonstrate representation of the low-income communities within the service area of the CDE. The role of the advisory board is to provide that low-income community representation, which includes both project review and also what you could call generically a community benefits agreement, which ordinarily requires annual compliance at the community level by each project. So the role of the advisory board is to essentially manage and administer that community benefit process, which again involves both looking at individual projects to ensure that they meet the community benefits requirements of the CDE, and then also monitor the projects going forward to make sure that the project owners meet the requirements that they agreed to in the beginning.
Who appoints the advisory board?
The advisory board is basically selected by the operating, by the governing body
Of the CDE.
Of the CDE. In this case, as we've been working with Paul, that will be a joint process, and part of the purpose of having a joint agreement is that the three local administrative agents or administrative bodies plus CUIDA will jointly select the advisory board membership based on kind of locally developed criteria. Just as a little background, public employees, council members can qualify as low-income community representatives if their constituency meets that requirement.
I'm not looking for a job.
No, trust me. But it can be members of a nonprofit organization that serves low-income community members. It can be a resident of a low-income census tract. It can be the employee of an agency that primarily provides services to low-income community members. But in each case, they have to be within the service area, and they have to be kind of selected through a process.
And the governing body is again appointed by, how's that, that's just basically part of the nonprofit structure, and that will be?
The governing board?
Yeah.
The governing board will be the owners of the entity.
Which will be the four, will be CUIDA.
CUIDA will be on the governing board.
And will someone from Washougal be on the governing board?
Well, I think
The makeup of the governing board is undetermined at this point, because we still, I don't want to get anybody in trouble with public records. Let me give my address to begin with. Paul Dennis, 1700 Main Street, Suite 208, Washougal, Washington, 98671. So the governing board and the makeup of the advisory board hasn't been predetermined. And that's one of the things I wanted to be careful of, is not to go out and for any of us to go select our buddies and form an entity and then run off and try to do good work. I really want it to be more of a collaborative process. And so we haven't gone out and decided, well, John Doe is going to be on the board and, this person and that person. It really is more of trying to come together, look at the projects. So we still got to do that whole phase one, that feasibility, and that will inform a lot of what does it look like, the CDE, is it feasible, what will it engage in, and that will help inform the setup of the governing board and the advisory board. And so we definitely want to have participation of our three public partners, but we haven't predetermined exactly how that's going to formulate. And I think, to be honest, I think it's too early for us to exactly identify who's going to be representing what portion of that.
Would we have any input into how that's structured?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So you're going to come back to us with,
Absolutely. And the way the contract's written is we have to come back at each phase. So phase 1 is the feasibility, looking at the projects, and we have to come back to each of the 3 partners. Phase 2, setting up the CDE, we're coming back and reporting, and then when we get to the application phase, we're coming back and reporting what is it that we're doing. And we purposely set that up through our discussion with the port last week. They wanted that ability. I didn't want it set up to where we have to keep coming back and restarting the process at each phase, but have that maximum authorization, but we still have to come back and meet that threshold and satisfy our partners that we are moving forward and what's being represented is true.
So what's our option if we're not satisfied
To
at the time of a report?
say we want to get out of the agreement.
And the others go on without us?
They could choose that, yeah.
Okay.
But that decision vests with each of the partners that are funding the project.
Thank you.
Steve, you made a comment about a council member having to have their constituents qualify, being in that certain part of the town. We're not, as council members, we're not designated to a specific area like some cities do. We're at large. So that wouldn't matter in that case. It would be just a matter of our choice.
I would have to go check. It's very regulatory, driven by the statutory and regulatory language. They have to go back and, they calculate. It's like, well, what percentage of the population of the whole city would qualify, and if it's more than 50%, then it's okay, and if it's less. So, as Paul was saying, I can't say specifically right now.
Yeah.
But it's an option. And again, not all of the advisory board members have to represent the low-income community of the service area. It's a percentage calculation as well. So.
Thank you.
Paul, you had another language change you wanted to make?
Yes, I would move that we amend general considerations number 5. Presently reads, Quita will keep the port, Camas, and Washougal. I would change that to Quita will keep the governing bodies of the port, Camas, and Washougal advised to the status. So all I'm adding is adding the 2 words governing bodies.
Is there a second? Got a motion and a second to add the wording governing bodies as noted under item number 5, general considerations. Any council discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we still have a motion on the floor as well to authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement. Is there additional council discussion? Dave?
I understand that Quita's been working on this proposal for 2 years, and yet it comes to us on a short leash here. The council's on a short leash, not Quita. Quita has a history of doing this. When the port founded Quita, it was all in a rush sort of thing, kind of like Obamacare. And I don't like doing business this way. Now, we've got this latest rush proposal. I also note that we could apply for funding to an existing community development entity that has funding, and by doing so, we would avoid the risks of not getting a funding allocation because they already have a funding allocation. We'd avoid the initial expense of $21,000 preparing a proposal that may not be funded, and we'd avoid the 7-year continuing expense of a CDE, most of which, as I understand it, would be funded by the grant. but I'm sure there would be additional expenses for us in there somewhere. I object to asking the federal government for money. I don't like being indebted to them. And I really don't like committing future generations of Americans to pay off this indebtedness, particularly since, and I don't have recent figures on this, but the latest one I have is 40 cents on every federal dollar is borrowed, much of it from outside the country. I have no desire to increase that indebtedness. I have to wonder if no one is invested in a $10 million project in Washougal, and that's, as I understand it, the minimum that would be feasible here to get the funding. What makes us think that someone will make such an investment now? What type of project in Washougal requires $10 million? Tax market credits have been available for years from other CDEs, but no one has used them to do a long-term or a large type project in Washougal. When I look at projects like this, I have to ask myself, this is the first question I ask myself, who will benefit? Quita? Yes. The CDE? Yes. The consultants? Yes. The lawyers? Yes. The accountants? Yes. The local government partners, the Port, Camas, and Washougal, will benefit only if funding is allocated and used. Otherwise, we'll just be bill payers, not a position I want to be in. So in looking at this project, I've reached the conclusion that it has all the earmarks of a get-rich-quick scheme and the attendant risks. And for this reason, I want no part of it. I urge my colleagues to consider very carefully whether or not we should do this. I'd much rather see that money put into streets. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Other discussion? Jennifer?
I do have a quick question. In reviewing the budget, I did look under the Community Development Fund, and I see there was nothing budgeted for this, $21,875 coming from our city, and I'm wondering where it's going to be coming from.
I think David addressed that at the last meeting.
I would like to hear again. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So we did not budget for this project. We weren't this far along last fall when we put the budget together. So we will identify a line item around professional services or from multiple departments' professional services in the general fund. Will be within the general fund appropriation. And we believe that at the end of the year, we won't need to ask the council for a supplemental appropriation to take care of this, that some of the salary savings that we have due to a number of position vacancies that are going to go on for a little while will cover this. It's similar to, for example, on the pickleball side, where we're going to be at your next meeting bringing you a contract where we are speculative to some extent on grant monies, but we need to get the pickleball courts done for the summertime, and we believe we can accommodate it in the budget, even though we didn't specifically appropriate for it. So it's okay for us to do it that way. The worst case scenario would be.
I'm sorry, can I just get you to repeat that? You're going to expense pickleball court money, not knowing whether or not we're going to get the grant for sure?
That's what we're going to be talking about at the next meeting, correct, in order to do that project. And those two projects, we believe, can be funded and will fall within the budget. The worst case
scenario. The dollar amount for the pickleball courts? I'm just curious, and I'm sorry getting off, but.
18,000 for that one.
Okay, so the 21 here and 18,000.
Right, and so that amount we are comfortable in recommending to you is accommodated in the overall general fund budget. And as we've seen at the end every year over the last several years, that type of an overage, if you would, really isn't an overage and is accommodated within the general fund budget. The worst case scenario would be if we don't end up with a year like that in 2014, that in what would be called a cleanup supplemental budget, we would be before you to make that additional appropriation.
Okay, and my other question is these new market tax credits are approved on a yearly basis by the federal government, is that correct? That's correct. Okay, so it's possible that we could plan for this and maybe try next year? Absolutely. Okay, great, thank you. I will also not be supporting this today for many of the reasons that have already been mentioned.
I would like to table the motion for 2 weeks.
Second.
Took the words right out of my mouth. You took the words right out of my mouth. I had my hand up to say we need more time.
I'm sorry, Joyce, I didn't hear the motion.
I'd like
Motion
to
to
make a
table.
motion to table this for 2 weeks. I'd like to understand the funding better.
Okay, I've got a motion to table for 2 weeks. Any council discussion? No, there is no discussion on a motion to table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So is there, in order to prepare for 2 weeks, you're asking about funding questions, that type of stuff. Is there additional information that you would like supplied to you? Are there things that you just don't understand yet about the program, or?
I would like to understand the funding more because we don't have it in the budget. And the presentation tonight and then to bring it to a vote tonight, to me, was too fast. This is complicated, and I've gone through it, and I just would like more time.
So again, my question for any council members is, we've got the folks here. Is there additional information that you need in the 2-week period that could assist you in making a decision, other than internally how we come up with $21,000?
I'm prepared to support it tonight, but one of the things that I would like some more information, or some more thought at least, to the governance of this, and perhaps some more input from the council into governing bodies and the structure it's going to take, with leaving enough flexibility for them to do what they need to do to make this work.
Second.
Well, that's just a...
No, I understand.
Okay.
Making a joke there, sorry.
Okay.
Any questions, I'm happy to address at any time.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, I had my
Thank you
hand up.
very much, Steve, for all of your,
Thank you.
Yes.
It's not like I need more information, at least not yet, because I haven't come up with new questions yet. It's just I feel like we have to have a lot more discussion amongst ourselves, which we have to do here in a meeting.
Which you could.
But
start
we
with
need
this
time
evening.
to think it through. We need to process what we received tonight. Because 2 weeks ago, we came here with a conception of what we thought we were going to do. I think we might have changed that conception, and now we're at the table discussing it. So 2 more weeks of discussion and contemplating, we'll probably come up with new questions. We know how to contact you and our own staff, so I think it's a good thing. I appreciate that.
So your belief is that the concept from 2 weeks ago is different tonight?
Not their concept, my understanding of it. Increases.
Point of clarification.
It's not,
I understand what you're doing, but please, please, I would appreciate respect. The council's made a decision. Really, that's all I ask for.
Councilmember, your comments are out of line. You're asking for additional information and additional time. I would prefer not to waste professionals' times in trying to guess what it is that you may need. I think it is out of respect to ask you as council members what additional information that we can give you. If you have a problem with that, you have a problem with that. I don't care. I would still like to give our folks the ability to give you the information that you need to make an informed decision. If you want to make an uninformed one, That's your own deal. David?
Wasn't the motion to table for 2 weeks?
Yes,
And that was the limit of the motion.
yes.
So there was no request for additional information. I understand the mayor's concerned about what else can we tell you. But, Mr. Mayor, it wasn't a requirement in the motion. I voted for this thing not to get more information, but because it's a step to getting rid of it. I think there were other reasons for voting for the delay.
Okay, moving to Agenda Bill
If I could,
27 and 14.
if I could just for a moment, I'd like to kind of take a different tack on what Connie Jo said. What we got 2 weeks ago and what we got tonight is a little bit, in terms of knowledge, like trying to take a sip from a fire hose. It takes a little while for some of this to sink in enough that you can actually ask an intelligent question. Thank you.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, moving to Agenda Bill 27-14, a resolution on local government investment pools. Mrs. Forsberg.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. As we discussed in the workshop at the end of March, the LGIP, Local Government Investment Pool, is requesting a renewal or a new copy of the resolution that authorizes the city to invest its extra funds in the government pool. The earnings aren't as great as longer-term options. However, it's very liquid. We can get our money back the next day with no issues. So it does earn us some money. So the recommended action is to read the resolution by title only and pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. One question that came up at workshop was if we could take the name out of the person and just leave it to the position that's authorized. And the state treasurer was fine with that change. So that has been reflected in the attached resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I ask unanimous consent we read the resolution by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
A resolution authorizing investment of City of Washougal monies in the local government investment pool.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass and post the resolution in the usual manner.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. Any council discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda Bill 2814, a resolution to eliminate the petty cash per transaction limit.
The Resolution 837 limited petty cash transactions to $75 each, and that restricts what we can use it for as a petty cash, because more of the quick items that we need to purchase or reimburse through petty cash typically cost more than $75. The Finance Department has internal controls in place to make sure that those petty cash transactions are approved, supported, and appropriate for a petty cash purchase. Therefore, we've brought forward the attached resolution to take away that $75 limit and leave it unlimited to the extent of the petty cash fund. So the recommended action is to read the resolution by title only and pass and post the resolution in the usual manner.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we read the resolution by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
A resolution amending Resolution 837 to eliminate the petty cash per transaction limitation.
Mr. Mayor, I move we pass and post the resolution in the usual manner.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. Any council discussion?
It would just say that Finance Committee did review this quite carefully, and we more than agreed with Director Forsberg.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda Bill 29-14, an ordinance to increase the amount of the city change funds.
Thank you. The city hasn't increased the change funds used by staff for day-to-day cash receiving duties since 2007. And obviously, the cost of things have gone up, so as more people pay with cash, we need additional funds to make change. So we're requesting to increase the petty cash limit of $450 to $600 and in the ordinance it specifies which departments it goes to. So the recommended action is to read the ordinance by title only, pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent we read the ordinance by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
An ordinance amending Washougal Municipal Code 3.96.010, increasing the city change funds from $450 to $600.
Mr. Mayor, I move we pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to
And
pass,
chorus.
post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. Any council discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And Agenda Bill 30-14, an ordinance to increase the non-sufficient funds fee.
Thank you. Again, the city hasn't looked at this fee since 1997, and the cost that the city pays per transaction exceeds the current fee that we charge individuals. The direct charge from the bank actually exceeds what we're currently charging. I discussed it with the Finance Committee as to what a charge should be charged, and we came up with a dollar amount of $40, which will cover the fees from the bank or the card provider and some of the staff time to actually reverse transactions, sends letters, and try to recoup those funds, and to hopefully make it a little bit more of a deterrent for folks that are writing checks to make sure that they have adequate funds to cover it at the time of the payment. So the recommended action is to read the ordinance by title only, pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we read the ordinance by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
An ordinance amending Washougal Municipal Code 3.68.010, increasing the fee charged when a payment is returned for non-sufficient funds from $15 to $40.
Mr. Mayor, I move we pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. Any council discussion? David?
Real quick, did I miss in there, what's the usual bank fee for that?
If it's from a check, it's roughly $22, and if it's a credit card, it's $25.
And we're asking 40.
Correct.
Why the discrepancy?
To have a fee on top of the fee, so to cover partially our time to process the payment again. So we have to
Oh, I
reverse
see.
the charges, we have to send a letter to the customer.
So we're paying the bank's fee,
Correct,
and then we're charging our fee.
correct.
Got it, thank you.
Any other council discussion?
Again, there was a hearty discussion between Finance Committee and Director Forsberg, and we're quite happy with this.
David?
Real quick, thanks to the Finance Committee, I know that you did have some animated discussions on all of these things, and it's been a tough week for you. Thanks for all the work you do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other council discussion? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish ordinance in the usual manner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And Agenda Bill 31-14, an amendment to the Council Rules of Procedure, Section 1.3, attendance excused absences.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This item's coming back to you for your consideration and recommendation for approval. The resolution implements some changes that you asked for with respect to your rules and how notice is provided by a member of the council with respect to absence from a meeting and then that absence being excused. As you'll recall, you asked for the city attorney and myself and Councilman Boger to look at that, and the language that you see in front of you is what was proposed. We reviewed this in workshop at your last meeting, so it's here for you. The recommended action is to read the resolution by title only and to pass and post the resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent we read the resolution by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
A resolution amending the City Council Rules of Procedure 1.3 regarding excused absences for council members.
Mr. Mayor, I move we pass and post the resolution in the usual manner.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. Any council discussion? David?
Just briefly, we've got everybody and their brother in here to notify in case we're going to be absent. Should we include the dog catcher?
Secretary of State.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other council discussion?
Just curious, what if that individual we notify forgets to do it? Or they're absent? Was that, do we still get excused?
I just sent a group.
There you go. No, it's legitimate.
Well, it is a legitimate question. I think after the fact, we could probably excuse someone. There's no reason why we have to excuse them when they're actually absent after the fact, and it slips a council member's mind or somebody that they didn't, or that other council member turned out to be absent too.
Sure.
Yeah,
You
there's
know?
nothing in state statute that says you can't do it in a subsequent meeting. And
Right.
You
Okay,
would
thank
ordinarily
you.
not expect that, but I think it could be done.
That satisfies me. Thank you.
Any further council discussion?
Who's the deputy city clerk?
We don't have a deputy city clerk. We have a city clerk.
Rose kind of fulfills that function, but it's not an officially appointed position, but there's a function, and Rose fulfills that function for
So
us.
whoever's performing that function that day becomes
Right, so
eligible.
to put names to positions, the mayor, myself, Jen, and Rose, or one of your
Fellow
colleagues.
council member.
Works for
And
me.
group emails to all of us is a great way. We really appreciate that, or any other way to do that. That way, if someone happens to be out of the office, then there's others on the distribution list that can catch it and make sure that we pass on the information.
That's good.
Any additional council discussion? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Trevor, back to some transportation benefit districts.
TBD.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Acronyms I've learned.
Pick up where we left off here. All right, we had left off at revenue options in regards to the Transportation Benefit District framework. The first is a property tax. A second is utilizing a uptick in local sales tax or use tax. And the annual vehicle tab fee, the $20 upwards to $100 for registered vehicles within the district, or TBD. Also, there's voter approval as far as looking at the tab fee, as far as the registered vehicles. This fee is collected at the time of the vehicle license renewal, and that's a pass-through through the Department of Licensing. So again, overview in regards to the amount of registered vehicles. There's just south of 11,000 vehicles that are registered. We had walked through what is a tab fee inclusive or exclusive type of vehicle as far as recreation vehicle or quad or motorcycle, and those are excluded. It's for the actual use of the highways and the surface streets. So when you project out the potential revenue, it would be just north of $214,000 on a $20 tab fee, which coupled with $150,000 from real estate excise tax gets you at the $365,000 mark, the scenario 2 that we went over earlier.
Remind me what the dollar figure was that we needed in scenario 2?
360,000.
360.
Yeah, 150,000 from real estate excise tax and just north of 210 from the $20 tab fee scenario. There was interest in looking at a phased-in approach in our last meeting at the council retreat in January. This is just working backwards as far as phasing in a $5 fee, and then upticking that to a $20 fee in a 4-year period. So you see the projection shortages in the first year, which is 161,000, 107 the following, and then 53,000 in the third year of a phased-in approach. And it's also important, I'd mentioned earlier about the pass-through through the Department of Licensing. There is a lag, which is anticipated to be at least 6 months, maybe upwards of 8 months, to be able to actually get this in place once the TBD is formed, to be able to have DOL trickle those specific dollars towards the entities that's created, the Transportation Benefit District. So there's a few implications in looking at a phased-in approach. Obviously, we looked at the deterioration curve earlier at the top of the conversation, and looking at the phased-in approach really gets you between scenario 2 and scenario 3. And so as you look down, and I'll show the illustration next, you see a real steep downward trend given the time where we're at on the continuum of the chart. So you'll see the red bubble in the 5th year, which is right in between scenario 2 and 3 and looking at a phased-in approach. And there's no specificity to that specific red line and red dot, if you will, that's projected at a pavement condition index of 76. It just gives you a general sense of phasing it in and basically deferring on maintenance that needs to take place on our surface streets. And it's hard to see on here, but you can see the red cross again in regards to our current 80 to 79 PCI. Taking into consideration the useful life and when the street went into use, when it was platted or reconstructed and went into service, a lot of our subdivisions that were built in the late 1990s and early 2000s upwards to 2004 or 5 before it slowed pre-recession, you see 12 to 13 years of separation from when those were platted and went into service and were signed over as municipal assets. And so that curve gives you a general sense. It's not an exact science, but it does get very steep in the 15th year if you did have a road that was newly constructed. So I just took quick reference of TBDs that are in place in other jurisdictions. Kelso has a $20 tab fee that was passed in December of 12. Snoqualmie, similar in 2011. Maple Valley, Wapato, Burien has imposed a $10 fee. In aggregate, 52 TBDs with different revenue framework from tab to uptick in sales tax or property tax assessment. There was also interest in LIDs, and if LIDs would be an opportunity for revenue enhancement as far as the surface streets. Typically, LIDs are for capital improvements, hard and fast infrastructure, whether that's improving water lines or pulling sanitary sewer lines for waste conveyance. And typically it's financed and paid for over a period of time through assessments on the benefiting property owners. So this is real high level, and again, looking at the asterisk below, doesn't take into consideration the parcel size, the frontage, size of the frontage or length of the frontage or other complexities. But $214,000 need to get to scenario 2. I got a parcel count from Director Forsberg, just south of 7,000 parcels, what equates to about $30 per parcel to be able to reach that $214,000 revenue mark. So again, in looking at the LID option, it's really about financing infrastructure improvements, not constructing them. It's really getting the framework in place to be able to actually construct the infrastructure. And again, typically it's the sale of bonds to investors and the retirement of those bonds via annual assessments on the owner within a district. So again, general overview, time and money as far as demand to set up and administer. Obviously, after it's created, you still have the life of the LID as far as a 10-year, 15, 20-year term. So there is continued administration that's associated with the LID. Projects are paid for by property owners again, but are constructed by or on behalf of the municipality. And it is subject to statutory bid limits and prevailing wages. So again, looking at the LID and doing capital improvements, the assumption is that the life of the financing should match the life of the improvement as far as depreciating out the asset. So this doesn't take into consideration all of the players or individuals that have a hand in creating an LID, but it does give you a general sense of the complexity as far as getting it off the ground and working with underwriters and bankers and advisors and consultants, amongst other players that play into LID. So the overview with the LID, obviously complex and time-consuming for all parties, not only the potential property owners that would be assessed, but also potentially a significant impact to finance department's current scope of work. Maintenance system, infrastructure-wide approach. This really gets down to spot improvements where you can get into quasi, not haves and have-nots, but specific parcel owners being able to dictate improvements along the frontage of their parcels, whereas other parts of town potentially could not as far as financial obligations. And ultimately, property owners that are unable to pay liens are filed on the property to be able to recoup the capital improvement or the preservation or maintenance that would take place and would be identified in the underwriting provisions. So that's the overview based on our last discussion around TBDs dating back to January. Really the pavement condition index score, which is hovering close to 80 right now. Some high-level overview of transportation benefit districts, the ability to create that at the local level, other jurisdictions that have already leveraged dating back to 2008, the TBD framework provided by the state, and also high-level overview of local improvement districts. With that, I'd open it up for any questions or comments.
David? Just a quick comment on the LID. I would not be in favor of that because it uses indebtedness to fund current expenses like street maintenance. I don't see any point in doing that, but in addition, part of the money that comes in is going to be used to pay off the debt. So you're getting less on the streets and more on the debt, and I'd rather avoid that. I'd like to put everything that we get onto the streets, none of it on debt. Question on the Transportation Benefit District. Would our Transportation Benefit District preempt a county tag fee? Or could they just slap another one on us?
So it's my understanding in talking to Public Works staff, our city engineer, Rob Charles, attends RTAC on a monthly basis, that was thrown out as far as roundtable feasibility around a countywide tab fee. There's multiple stakeholders that are at that table, including CTRAN, the Port of Vancouver, as well as the Port of Camas-Washougal. And so that's been thrown around, the feasibility of looking at that, but I don't know if there's been any final determination to chase it more in a more honed-in fashion.
But if, the question is, if we found a transportation benefit district, does that preempt the county from hitting us with their own tag fee?
That's my understanding within our specific jurisdiction and what the limits are within the TBD within our service area,
So it would preempt them from doing that?
at least in our specific area. Other parts of the county, when you take into consideration either Camas, Battleground, north towards Ridgefield, that would potentially be impacted by a countywide tab fee assessment.
But
If we've created our own, it would preempt us from that. That's my understanding, but I can research that further to be
So ours would stay in the city and cover our expenses and wouldn't go outside the city
Right.
to the county.
I like that aspect of it.
Jennifer?
Yes. Trevor, I have a question for you. Do you know how many cities within the state of Washington have a tab fee?
52.
52.
Yeah.
It's on the
Municipal Research, MRSC
It's 52?
website shows 52 with
Are there
different
Are there
revenue.
any cities in Clark County that currently have a TBD with a $20 tab fee?
No. Kelso's the closest with the $20 tab fee, and Cowlitz, I believe. Ridgefield has a pending sales tax uptick for their specific service area. That's pending.
Okay, so
Up 2/10.
if we established a TBD, we would be the only city in Clark County that would have an increase in the tab fee.
That's my understanding.
Morning, Joe.
There was a TBD in recent history, but I don't remember who it was that had it. I've heard it talked about at C-Trend. Does anybody have that? And then they did away with it. Wasn't the city of you don't know. Wasn't the city of Vancouver?
Vancouver considered one. They never adopted it.
Why not?
No comment.
Well, my immediate
Client relationship.
reaction is no new taxes. Read my lips, no new taxes.
That was kind of it.
Yeah. And we said earlier, tongue in cheek, but it's true, once you form one, they never go away. Which is why I wanted to know, was there one? And it did go away. They finally did away with it. Sorry, I don't have more on what C-Tran did, but it seems that that's where I was when this topic came up.
The city of Ridgefield had a TBD, 0.2 of a cent, April 1st, 2009, repealed October 1st, 2012. According to a chart on the MRC website, I would suggest any council member take a look at MRSC's. Just Google MRSC Transportation Benefit Districts, and they've got lots and lots of good information on there.
Because this is an ongoing maintenance issue that our city will always have.
Yes.
And we brought it up to this 80% level. We don't want it to fall below. So how are we going to deal with this? Where will we find this money if we don't raise taxes with a tab fee, which is what a tab fee is? Well, that's what we need from staff. We got to know where to find this money without raising taxes.
It's my own view that this is not a tax, but rather a user fee. Because the only people who pay the fee presumably have vehicles that are driving on the road or on our streets. If you are restricted to a bicycle or you live in senior living and you're not on the road, you don't pay the fee because you don't have a tab that it's included in. So it's a pretty specific user fee rather than a general tax.
Well, the state of Washington is shocking because I come from California, and just this last time just a week ago, I renewed my car tab, and they charged me to get a new license plate every 7 years, and then they charged me for the special reflective coating. I know we're all paying this, not just me. The fees that we pay for our cars are shocking to me.
They were higher in California, Connie Joe.
But the reasons, I'm talking about the reasons.
Yeah.
You have to change your license plate every 7 years?
Well, I would still take what we have here over what we had in California.
I just look at the tab fee and I think people would be up in arms over it.
And I have a couple of specific questions. What happens to annexations? If we do a TBD, which describes the current boundaries of the city, what happens if we annex something? Does it become part of the TBD or not?
I would believe that it would become part of the TBD, but I can research that very specifically.
I would appreciate that greatly.
Most annexation ordinances say that they're now responsible for all city indebtedness, and I don't think there'd be much question about it.
You might have to specifically call it out in the annexation ordinance.
You could do that, but yeah, I think there's a general phrase there in most annexation ordinances that say you're now responsible for all city indebtedness.
And then an observation, I would, even with only a $20 fee, let me actually make a earlier observation. The city of Portland is presently in discussions about an $8 a month effectively tab fee. Tab fees are not as such part of Oregon law, but they want to charge every parcel $8 a month as a road fee in Portland.
Every
And-
parcel or every tab?
I'm sorry?
Every parcel or every tab?
It's not a tab fee, because I don't think they can do, it was not described as a tab fee. They don't have empowering legislation in Oregon to do tab fees. But I would point out that's $96 a year, pretty close to $100 a year, not 20.
Which is why we live here.
Exactly. And furthermore, I would expect some loss. You add $20 to somebody's tab fee, and a few of them will find a brother-in-law in Clark County where they can register their car. And we've traditionally had quite a problem with people registering cars in Oregon and living in Washington. And so I would expect that without having to put a number on it, we need to at least be aware that if we do this, that we're going to need to do some more enforcement on registrations matching residences, which we do a smidgen of now, but it's certainly something that's going to become a little bit more of an issue.
What is that process? Who's the oversight?
The police department does that.
I have a question.
That's all.
I have a question. Will there be a cost, if the state collects this, will there be a cost out of that fee, whatever we decide it to be? Would we be paying the state some money to administer it?
I don't believe there's a nominal fee, but we can research that further, just to make sure.
So that if we had like a $20 fee, we would get the full $20.
Yeah, that's my understanding, but we'll look into it further, give you accurate information on that.
Connie Jo?
No, I was scratching my nose.
Brent?
Thank
Have you considered one of the things I'm a little uncomfortable with is, I think I paid to renew my car, not including the smog check, $43.
$43.75.
43, okay, all right. And we're talking about hitting our residents with nearly a 50% increase in 1 year.
Percent.
What's that?
46%.
I'm sorry to steal your thunder, Jennifer.
That's all
right. I'm wondering if we can, and I've discussed it with staff, a phase-in of this, and I don't think I can vote for a $20, 46, what was it, 46 point?
46%, and it
Okay,
raised
40
from $43.75 to
46% increase in 1 year. So I know that would kind of put our program back a little bit, but I'm not going to impose an immediate $20, support a $20 immediate fee.
So when you get a chance and can go back over the presentation that Trevor just did, he talks about, there's a couple slides in the presentation that talk about that. This slide right here shows what would happen, I think it was a 5, 10, 15, 20, so a 4-year phase-in. The cumulative sum of, if you would call it, lost revenue compared to doing 20 right away was roughly a year's worth of investment that we need. And so that setback over the 4 years would, this is just an estimate, it's not precise, would result in that red dot that you see there. That would be the deterioration. So
It would drop from 78 to
76,
76.
right.
Unless you made up the funds, got those funds from somewhere else.
Right. And I was just going to offer the comment just to, because it has been a little bit since we were in your annual planning session. We had a presentation from the consultant who brought us some data so that we had some hard data to look at in terms of what our pavement condition index is. And before you can talk as a council or even to the community about paying for something, it's good to know what is it that we're paying for and what do we need. So now we have a system in place that we can do that. Gives you real solid data to inform your decision. At the annual planning session, we heard consensus from the council that we need to maintain our pavement condition index as high as we possibly can. And you wanted to understand what it would take to do that and what a couple of different options for that would be. And you particularly wanted to understand what a transportation benefit district would mean. And at that time, we were asked about the phase-in. We were also asked about the LID option. So the presentation also has the conversation and the discussion about that. This is a question in the totality of the budgeting process. This is a need in the community. It's clearly a council priority to maintain the pavement condition index. And so it can happen, given our current constraints, in a couple of different ways. Pretty straightforward. One is we can raise new dedicated revenue, and that's a revenue side solution. And that's what this would do. It could be phased in, it has an impact, it could be done immediately. It could go to a vote for a sales tax or a property tax, all with the same goal.
Or a higher TBD fee.
Or a higher TBD if we wanted to stay up at 80 and get the 500 a year. You could go to the voters with that, or you could do that after a little while. That's one end of the spectrum. The complete other end of the spectrum is to find the money in the budget. And given our current projections for 2015 and beyond, that would be an exercise in program reduction and expenditure reduction. Dollar for dollar, we'd be looking, generally speaking, to find $212, something like that, $1,000 in our general and street funds. Just as a rule of thumb, and I'm not suggesting that this would be, it's just a rule of thumb to give you a feel for what an expenditure reduction of $212,000 would be. That's 2 positions in fire, 2 positions in police, or other professional positions is roughly what that would be. So, or other areas we're investing. There are some other areas we're investing where we could, scale back. That would just be a prioritization discussion for the council. As you have with all of your conversations, what are our priorities in the budget, and how do we want to do that? Or it could be a combination of the two. You could look at some new dedicated revenue, less than the amount necessary to meet your goal for the PCI, or you could and look at some programmatic reductions. Now, as we get later in the year, Jennifer in finance will be able to refine her revenue estimates for 2015 to see what that does to what we call our structural deficit. She's already been pretty bullish in taking economic indicators that say things are going better in sales tax and some of the other areas, so we don't believe that there'll be much more room with that. So this all falls into that overall conversation about solving that problem and meeting our goals in this particular area. And I think an ancillary piece to that is also the levy lid lift that you asked for more information about, the replacement of the 10-cent levy lid lift that we've postponed for a couple years. You asked for us to come back with that, and we will be back with that information for you at a workshop soon here in the next couple of months. So all of that kind of stirs together.
What was item 3? You said new revenue, find it in the budget, or?
A combination.
Combination.
Right.
Thank you.
Dave?
At this point, what I'd like to know, excuse me, is what are the opportunity costs for funding this from the budget next year? Not this year. This year is a third gone. But for next year, what would the opportunity cost be? What would we have to cut to get to where we need to be? And frankly, I think we need to be at option 1 up there. but that's negotiable.
You would need to cut a lot of positions, people, and potentially programs.
And that's what I'd like to see. What is the cost of that?
$500,000.
Well, we would need the difference between
That's a
100.
dollar cost. What I'm looking for is, what are the opportunity costs? What are we gonna forego to do this on the budget we've got now, given the revenue that we expect next year?
Connie Jo?
I'd like to know what a legitimate way of asking the public's opinion.
Put it on the ballot?
I mean, I realize, I realize the ballot is the most definitive way. Is there another way? I mean, are polls legitimate? Can we do a really thorough polling of our community and asking, are you willing to put $20? I mean, it's not a lot. Are you willing to put $20 a year on your vehicle to keep all of our streets at 80 or 78?
We can absolutely do a community survey that could be scientific. You know, there are costs associated with doing that. When you would go out with a community survey, this could be one of a number of questions that could be asked to set some baseline data about the community's perceptions, and you could ask about this specific issue.
So we need to know the cost of the survey versus the cost of the ballot initiative or ballot
It's easy to actually,
issue.
you know, we could go out and ask for $20.01. And, you know.
Then it has to be voted on.
That would have to be voted on. I wouldn't recommend doing that. That's a little cute, but out of curiosity,
Which is cheaper.
You know, we basically have dedicated $150,000 a year from the REIT for this. We need another $350,000 to do the 80 plan. What kind of tab fee would we need to impose to generate the money for that?
I think it would be roughly $35 in that range, because 20 gets us 220 and we need 350, so we wouldn't need to
And
go
if
to
the voters
40.
approve that, we would have it funded.
That's correct. There are communities that have, as part of their community surveying process, asked about this issue, and it informed a ballot measure or council action. There are other communities that have, where the councils felt like, you know, that it was the council's role to make a decision councilmanically on a $20 fee, and they did that.
What is the difference in cost between putting it on the ballot or having a survey where you could also address other issues?
It's cheaper to put on the ballot.
I think a survey, you wouldn't just ask this one question.
Right.
Because there's going to be a lot of sunk costs just to put a survey together. Depending on how many questions you have, a survey is somewhere between $10,000 and $30,000.
And what does it cost to put an issue on the ballot?
It really varies. If it's done in a general election where everybody, you know, in the community has a lot of items on the ballot, then the number can be lower. It could be in the lower end of that range for that one added one. If you kind of stand alone, it could equate to that. Now, the value of a community survey would be, well, it's not binding, of course, it's just information for you, but you could get information on a lot of different topics, not just this one. So, but, you know, it would, before you would invest in the ballot, you might want to query your constituents. We can do an unscientific survey where you just put something on the web and let people do it with the Survey Monkey. It's not scientific, though, and that's the drawback of something like that.
No, that's not effective.
Can you do something with the water bills? Send out a single question with a little bit of information in the water bills.
That is one method of distribution for a random sample survey, so that you get some valid data back. Phone calls, mailers, you can use voter registration lists, so that's one way to do it. It's not so much asking the question, it's getting the results and analyzing the results and packaging the information in a presentable way that you pay for. You pay for the expertise in analyzing the data and providing meaningful interpretation of the data back.
Data pretty simple here. Only 2 data points, yay and nay.
Paul?
I just used my iPad here, and if you think new market tax credits are complicated, forget trying to figure out what it costs to register a vehicle in California. It's even more complicated. But in Oregon, in Multnomah County, it costs $62 a year for an automobile. Idaho, it goes down depending on the age of the vehicle. A new vehicle, I forget, the cheapest one was a vehicle more than 7 years old, is $28 a year.
They do less damage to the road.
Well, having driven 84 through Idaho, I don't think that's true, but.
No, it's not true.
In any case, just, that's the only thing I could come up quickly with, but for comparison.
One other comment, we discussed this very briefly at the annual planning session. Counties in the state have the ability to have a road fund, and they assess annually through property taxes for that. And we pulled up a volunteer from our staff's address at the planning session, just typed in their county address and found several $100s that go into the county road fund every year as a resident. In a city, we don't pay that. And that was one of the reasons that the city family asked the legislature for this tool, is we don't have a road fund, if you would. It comes out of our general tax dollars. Now, I won't say that the entirety of those property tax revenues to the county road fund go for their pavement management program. I know that they don't. And I know that they also can look at this source of revenue as well, and I'm sure that they would tell you that their street fund is challenged in spite of that. It just gives you a flavor that there are different ways that different levels of government pay for maintenance of their programs, and this is one of the tools that we've been provided with. We don't get a road fund like the county has.
It came up at RTC that the county at this point figures it has 10% of the money it needs to do pavement maintenance.
Dave?
At this point, would it be out of line to call the question? And if I remember the question correctly, it was whether or not we move forward with the Transportation Benefit District?
We really haven't even gotten to that
discussion.
question. This is simply
This is
discussion and
discussion.
information for you.
This is,
What's our
There's
deadline?
no question to call.
It's not on the agenda.
Shucks.
So what kind of a deadline are we looking at when we need to have this answered?
There's no specific deadline.
So we have time to go to a ballot or a survey then?
Absolutely.
Ballot in November.
There is no specific deadline. We just know that as your advisors, and meeting your goal of trying to keep our pavement condition index in the blue, the darker blue, if we could do green, that we're going to need to figure it out by the end of the year or into early next year, how we will fund that. Part of our annual budget cycle would be a great time to have that. So we have planned to have several workshops. We wanted to get on this topic, we wanted to get your feedback this evening, any specific guidance or direction across the spectrum. What I'm hearing is some reticence potentially to go directly councilmanically to a $20 tab fee, and I don't think the guidance here is to bring you back the ordinances to create a transportation benefit district with a $20 tab fee right out of the gate, but to explore options for querying the community and to come back with you with some information on that.
Dave?
You're very perceptive. That's exactly what I'm looking for. I want to stick my toe in the water out there and find out what the temperature is, because everybody that I've talked to about these options has given me an answer that began with 4-letter words and some rather strong ones. So I'm interested in whether or not I'm getting a cross-section of opinion here in Washougal. And I think the only way to do that is through some sort of survey mechanism.
Okay, Joe?
I also know that people talk to me about their roads all the time. I go to church and people ask me to come by their house, not for lunch, but to look at the condition of their roads. I'm like, well, sister. So I know roads are a priority to people, especially when you're in an older neighborhood. I love that our highway is brand new, and I love that our main street is brand new, and we're fortunate in that respect. But there are neighborhoods that need addressed, and my goal would be to keep it at 80%. Although I'm saying no new taxes, I'm believing that, I mean, the number 80, not percent. But I think it needs to be a decision of the folks that live in town. I appreciate your wisdom too on the lid approach, because of the fact that it's indebtedness, and that's just losing money instead of gaining ground. So, because at first I had a question of what's the difference between charging a driver and charging an owner, and you answered it because of the way it's funded. It's by borrowing.
But it's not our borrowing.
No.
It's the property owner's borrowing, basically.
Bonds are issued.
Still
costing.
The problem is that the money's not going, all of it's not going to the streets. Part of it's going to the indebtedness.
Well, it's going for interest on the bonds plus administrative costs.
Yeah.
So I
why go
kind
with
of,
that?
Well,
I'd like to have a discussion further on that.
I don't think I would go with the lid either, although it was kind of, I threw it out there for discussion. It would just be too cumbersome.
I don't believe that you would get any takers for bonds to try and.
Because that has to go to a
finance.
vote.
No,
No, it doesn't? Mm.
well, of the property owners.
Yeah,
You
well-
have to turn to the property owners, but if you wanted to take wherever the neighborhood is that folks want you to come drive by, and their entire neighborhood, and say, we can completely rebuild your streets for you, here's the price, here's what we're prepared to do, here's what it'd cost you, then if they're willing to do that, that makes total sense. To do it for maintenance, no. To completely rebuild and get them up to standard and do all those kind of things, you bet they're done.
I'm not even sure you can do it for maintenance legally. You can do it to rebuild them, but you can't do it for
With a
maintenance.
lid.
You can do preservation. We did research that, right? And just as an order of magnitude, Counselor, you had asked, just to get an order of magnitude feel, if we spread the 500, really it was the 360 over every parcel in the town, what would that be? And it's $30
A year.
a year, right? So it's in that order of magnitude of if you have one vehicle. It would hit every property though, including commercial properties. This is why some communities look at the sales tax, because then everyone who uses the road pays.
Yeah, because I
Presumably
was
use the
gonna,
road.
I was gonna ask, because people that come, they live right outside the city boundaries, they're using our roads, whether they're a foot out or whether they're up the hill there. They're still coming down using our roads. So you're saying that if we do a sales tax, they shop in Washougal, they pay?
Correct, and that was the rationale for a couple of communities, and that's why they did that, and they asked about it in a community survey. There's no right or wrong particularly to either of those. If you decide to take a revenue side approach, partially or fully to the solution, there's arguments in favor of different revenue streams.
I would like to see a survey done, because you can add other questions and find out other things about the city that we all may want to know, but then you get a feel for what people out there are saying besides the grocery store or just our neighbors. We might, at least it would give us perhaps some guidance to do this in a reasonable manner. We're going to have to do something.
Paul?
Do we have consensus that there's no reason for staff to spend any more time on LIDs?
Yes.
I'm down.
I'm uncomfortable with the sales tax idea. Washougal, if you look at the amount of money that is spent by people who live in Washougal and the amount of it that is taxed here, it's minuscule. Most of the spending is outside of Washougal, and that means that sales tax doesn't effectively capture the Washougal residents who are using the roads.
I agree.
I don't know if it's been true in the past couple of years, but certainly a few years back, there were a number of months where the largest sales taxpayer in the city was Safeway. And there's almost nothing that they sell that's taxable. So, that's it.
Any other council discussion? Okay, I think we've talked this one to death for the moment.
Yep, we have what we need for the next workshop. Thank you.
That brings us on the agenda to our second opportunity for anyone from the public that would like to address council. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. 4813 K Street, Angard. I haven't been here for a while, and mainly because my husband's the mayor, and this past year has been very, very stressful for all of us. I came here tonight hoping that I would see people working together, being kind to each other, talking with dignity to each other. And I'm quite disappointed that it's still continuing. My suggestion to everybody is maybe in your survey that, Mr. Mayor, you ask the citizens if maybe going back to every week with workshop and council meetings so everybody can be involved in all of the decision-making that's being done outside this building. My suggestion, be kind to each other. God did not put us on this earth to treat each other with disrespect. And that's everybody included, and myself.
Wanda, anything from you? You don't have to. Okay.
I'm just here to find out what happens with the kitchen.
Under Mayor's Report, I have a few items for you. Again, just reminders on your schedule, and we can make sure that, that Rose gets these out as well. One, thank you to the staff that were at the Saturday waterfront project kickoff. That was nice to see the number of people that were there on such a gorgeous day, and good to see our graduate students that are out there leading that effort in there. This Wednesday, up at Columbia Ridge, the Retirement Center, there is an open house at 4 p.m. and after hours for the Chamber of Commerce and their introduction of their new executive director. Meals on Wheels, Wanda, you've got a luncheon this Thursday at 11 a.m. countywide down at the Hilton Hotel. There is a school town hall meeting on Wednesday. That's at 6 p.m. up at Washougal High School. You do have invitations, or should have all gotten invitations, to attend a dinner, informal dinner with the library board on April 21 at 5 p.m. in the Civic Center, prior to their meeting at our library. And finally, on Friday the 25th at 10 a.m., there is a ribbon cutting for the new Foods in Season building down in the Steigerwald Commerce Center. Those are all the items that I have for you. Council members. Brent?
Well, the one thing that came up at our, whatever you call it, we're doing on Fridays, every other Friday now, the ad hoc committee on the budget, there was a public comment on what the status of the kitchen remodel is. There seemed to be some questions about that. Did I not say it correctly for my other council members who were there? I mean, is that basically what the question was?
Certainly, at the next workshop, it would be interesting to have an update, unless you've got something off the top of your head.
Sure, we can give you an easy update.
I can give you a very quick update. It's pretty straightforward. Still a hot project. We're still fully supportive of the project. As you know, Unfortunately, the county kind of sprang a last-minute thing on us last year, and that was disappointing. So we scrambled to basically tap out our building capital fund. It basically taps it out to do that. Representative Pike was kind enough and had the foresight to identify that entire project as her top priority in the capital budget at the House. And it got on a list for a supplemental capital budget, passed the House, but the Senate decided they were not going to do a supplemental capital budget in the 2014 session. So it didn't happen. However, and that would have meant we wouldn't have to tap out that fund, and it would have paid for the entire project. But it didn't happen. That was disappointing. However, very encouraging news is that it is likely that very early in the session, next session, there may be a supplemental capital budget so that they don't wait all the way until the end of the full long session to do new appropriations, and that early in the year we might see something like that happen. There's no guarantee for that. So we were encouraged by Representative Pike to not lose hope for that funding. It seems like a very efficient way to try to accomplish our goals there and not have to tap out the fund. So where we're at is keeping our fingers crossed for that and to see what will happen with that. In the meantime, the county health department has been gracious to give us a little bit more time to come into compliance. There's a couple of things that we need to do for them to be acquiescent to that. One of the things is our commitment to them that we are going to do this project, notwithstanding what happens as a result of this. So we're very appreciative of their cooperative attitude with us. Depending upon what happens with all of those things, we may or may not need the assistance that Meals on Wheels was going to get. And if we do, then we'll leverage that and match that. So we are taking a little bit of a wait and see approach so that we can maximize our dollars and make sure that we stretch every dollar we have in that limited fund. If we are unsuccessful, then we do the project as originally scoped, and thank Representative Pike for her interest and her help, and we really appreciate her support for our seniors and the project.
Was the project for the kitchen was $50,000, am I correct?
No, $125,000.
The overall project for the community center, senior center, is about $212,000.
Okay.
So the kitchen part was in that 100 and something range, depending on exactly what the county wanted and how much the different commercial appliances cost. So there was a range that was provided for that, and we were able to provide $50,000 out of our building capital fund to basically meet the gap for that.
But then Meals on Wheels or Loaves and Fishes were going to come in with some other funding.
Right, grant dollars, I believe primarily from a number of different sources, correct. And so we've been working with Wanda, or the team's been working with Wanda and communicating on this to make sure that we're not compromising her ability to get access to those grants. There was an issue, these are operational issues, there was an issue around buying all of the commercial kitchen appliances and then sitting on them for a while we waited to see if we could get Representative Pike's help to come through in January and then sit on those, and that wouldn't make much sense. But the word we got was that taking a pass on that wouldn't compromise our ability to get that same thing in the next several months. So.
Well, the Meals on Wheels program is certainly vital in our community. Anybody that's gone over there and driven around, people are dependent on that, so.
Yeah, we're very hopeful that that we'll have good news for the project and for our parts of it, the re-roof and the mechanical, because we want to do all of that at the same time. We don't want to go in and muck around in the building twice. I think that would be bad for everyone that uses it. So a short timeout to try to be the most efficient as we possibly can with the limited dollars that we have, with the commitment, which, that if it doesn't work out, then, we do it as originally planned.
Jennifer?
Yes, okay, I did pull my budget just so we get some correct figures. The City Hall Civic Center facade replacement was $60,000. The Community Center HVAC and roof was budgeted at $160,000, and the community room kitchen was at $125,000. Does that sound about right?
Right, so the 160, is that what it was for the HVAC?
Community Center HVAC and roof is $160,000.
Right, so when you add the 50 to that, then you get the 210. And that's what we asked. We asked for 212. That was the estimate that Rob had us use.
For the grant?
For the direct appropriation and the how.
For the direct appropriation.
Right, that Representative Pike went to bat for us on. She asked us for a project, a community project, and the city engineer suggested this project. And Representative Pike made it her #1 project.
Right.
In the process.
Right.
Correct. So all of those funds are identified to come out of the Building Capital Facilities Fund. You can imagine that if
Well, I think it's one, I'm not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but I think it's great, if we do get those funds, and we can certainly replace funds in the facilities capital fund if, that does come about. However, I know that this was presented to the councils, particularly the kitchen project, as being in code violations, and that we needed to start sooner than later. And so I do remember the council having a discussion about, yes, indeed, let's move forward with it. And so, to have everything try to roll into, fingers crossed, let's get some money from the state, I'm not really sure that's the smartest thing to do, to wait.
well, the county has told us that we're fine.
Yeah, we went
County's on
through
board.
Wanda in order to get that word that they gave us until September of 2015.
Well, my hand was up to ask what the date was that they'd given us. That's
I don't remember
very
the-
generous.
I don't
Keep in mind,
remember the exact date.
when we suggested putting the 50,000 into the budget from the building fund and basically wipe that thing out to only a couple $1,000s, the way it was presented to us, the health department was about to close down that ability to use that. And we responded in kind and said, we won't allow that to happen. That impacts too many people, most certainly the Meals on Wheels, in addition to all the senior programs. Since that time, that emergency no longer exists. We're still prepared to come back and build that, all the repairs for that center this next year, potentially even putting it into the hopper for CDBG funding as well. So,
Very good news.
in terms of trying to be as efficient as we can with our own dollars, and not only having the state pay for that kitchen project, but also potentially paying for the entire repair for that building, which our legislators are telling us is resonating very highly with their folks up there. We don't see any problem waiting on that period to see if we can get that gifting put in. Now, in the meantime, if there's additional grant dollars that are put towards it, and 212,000 comes down to 150,000, or comes down to 100,000, obviously, even in Olympia, that's an easier ask than $200,000. So I think we've basically set ourselves up to be able to take advantage of one or the other. Hopefully one coming through sooner, which would basically pay the bill for doing all of that for us, but with a little bit of time lag in there.
And if part of the coordination of the project too is when we do the HVAC work, and I'm not an HVAC contractor, but one of the requirements that we have is for a commercial hood, which would be really nice when we do put that in. That ties into the overall HVAC system. So the $160,000, which is for the roof in the HVAC system, if Representative Pike can get that through in January or February, all of that would be paid for. We would save that 160, and then we wouldn't have to duplicate work with an HVAC contractor coming in and doing a commercial hood, and they can tie it into the brand new system. So there's a lot of moving pieces and parts. The kitchen doesn't stand alone from the re-roof and the HVAC project. It's a coordinated overall project. So it could be done, but it would be difficult and there'd be some redundancy of effort, and the project would cost us more if we separated it out to do it ahead of time. I think the key message is, I don't want there to be any misunderstanding, we are going to re-roof our senior and community center. We are going to replace the HVAC in our senior and community center, and we're going to have a fully code compliant, awesome commercial kitchen in our senior and community center. And we're very hopeful on behalf of all of our constituents that we'll be able to do that with the state's dollars instead of our own, so that we can do some of the projects that you didn't see during the budget process that we have needs for, like some rotting facade in other places around City Hall, and some work down at the Ops Center and some different things. It would be great to be able to leverage that for that. So that's why we're doing it, just to try to stretch those funds as best we can.
Okay, Joe?
Is it possible to invite Wanda up to comment?
I second that. She's been very, very patient.
It's a long night, huh?
I'm not usually quiet that long.
And it's Nelson, not Sykes, right?
That's right. So my name's Wanda Nelson, 1818 Northeast 267th Avenue. I was involved in the meeting with the health department. The health department doesn't want to shut down Washougal Senior Center. The health department doesn't want to shut down Meals on Wheels. It was brought to the attention that the grant did not go through. It wasn't, you know, I guess my problem with this is, and I hope I don't offend anyone, but I'm just going to be really blunt because that's how I kind of roll. The money that was set aside for this project and the money that Meals on Wheels was going to acquire for this project, that was going to be how it was. You had said that you were led to believe that this was an emergency situation. This was an emergency situation. They were going to shut us down. When Mr. Charles spoke with the health department, he looked at me when he said the grant didn't go through. I don't believe that the health department was led astray as much as given very specific information to make it appear one way. Is it wonderful that it's pushed back a little bit? Sure, because we would like the whole building taken care of more than just piecemealing it together. We want to make it a beautiful building where the whole community can join. I guess my issue with it is I don't feel like the communication is there in this issue. I feel like Meals on Wheels kind of is in the middle of a situation where we don't belong. You know, we were willing to come in and do our darndest to cover this project, where that $125,000, we haven't even got a drawing yet on this, except for a handwritten drawing. I love Washougal, the little town that could, you know, the little town that does. But Washougal needs to back its supporters too. And I feel like Meals on Wheels has kind of gotten a little sullied in this, when in all actuality, Meals on Wheels was more than happy, bound and determined to stand behind the city. So we will get the grant money, which was always the deal. Hopefully Liz Pike will take care of it. My people are never going to know this conversation happened, and hopefully I won't get in trouble for having this conversation. But I believe that Meals on Wheels has given very honest, very accurate information on this issue. I believe the health department is bending over backwards to make sure that this facility can stay open. And I would hope that all due respect would be given across the board. So I guess that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda.
I didn't mean to take up so much time.
So, in regards to council member comments?
I think I'll pass on that. I've taken enough time.
Karen?
I'll pass as well.
Paul?
I just wanted to mention a couple of events coming up. The Chamber Luncheon is this coming Thursday. I'm sorry, a week from this Thursday. At Camas Meadows. I did go to the Steve Stewart's retirement party, and there were way too many jokes about how Steve was going to have to dumb down to leave the county to join a city. There are way too many county people there.
And become a lawyer, too, on top of it all.
Local Connections gets together this coming Tuesday, the 22nd. I don't know where that will be yet. Ken Klein, the Riverview Bank manager, is the contact person there. And on Thursday, the 24th, Unite, the Washougal Community Coalition, will be meeting from 4:30 until 6 over at the second floor of the Community Social Services Building. Unite is a prevention coalition that's partially funded by the Washington State Prevention Redesign Initiative. It's an interesting group of people, so anyone who's interested, we'd love to have you. Thank you.
Joyce?
I'll pass.
Jennifer?
Nothing, thanks.
David?
Next Monday, the 21st of April, is the next meeting of the Public Safety Committee at noon at the Washougal Police Department. And I have to agree with Ann Guard tonight, who I see has already left, that good manners and courtesy are the sine qua non for an effective and manageable civilization. But in looking over my notes tonight, I find that with one exception, a 5-2 vote, all other votes were 7-0. I think we're getting it done here, and this is a lot more effective council. Our performance is a lot more effective in the last couple of years than it was before that. Everything before that was 4-3 and 3-4. Now it's, for the most part, 7-0.
I don't think she was talking about votes, but.
Say again?
I don't think she was talking about votes.
Oh.
Gunny Joe?
I would like to ask if we could spend some time updating this council on what's going on with C-Tran, or what's not going on with C-Tran. Just sort, I wouldn't want a lot of time, but maybe in a workshop. Just so many things. Things in litigation, pending, dysfunction. And I just feel like it's time to give you guys an update. And I'm planning to go to Camas for an update so I could do a trial run with you guys and have a discussion on how you're still feeling about where C-Tran is sitting. So, sooner than later.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As our
Like to hear that.
representative on the board, we definitely.
Yeah,
need
usually
to
I'll
have the
just
update.
announce that it's coming up, but it just seems to be dragging on and on and on. You know, everything that,
We
I mean,
need
the
to get you
mayor's
on the
involved in
schedule.
one committee and it hasn't gotten to be addressed, and it just, one after another, so, if I may. That's all I have, thank you.
With that, we will break for executive session. I'm going to estimate this thing's going to last probably at least 45 minutes in regards to labor relations and property acquisition, with no action
Thank you,
to
Wanda.
follow. If we could, take a 5-minute break. We'll be back here at 9:25, but council members, if you would, be back here at 9:25.
That was what I wanted to talk